Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Schmattz Outdoors. This is going to be another In the Fur Shed series video. Today I am making a beaver skinning trough. I do not have exact plans, I don't have dimensions, other than just kind of what I've figured out on my own. I'm going to kind of go through and show you what I'm doing and why I decided on the sizes that I did. We'll give you a quick picture of what I am after. So I hope you can see that. So basically it's just two boards along the ends, and then two boards set at an angle. And then on the underside of it, it looks like they got these little doubler blocks there to kind of support, you know, the long runs. I like that idea. That way all the weight of a beaver isn't on like the screws themselves. It's kind of pushing those boards down into that little support block. So I'm going to be doing the same thing. What I figured out is my skinning table is 32 inches wide by 48 inches long. I do not want to make it 32 inches because then if I turn it a little bit, it's going to want to fall off the edges. Or if I push it a little forward and back, it's going to want to fall off the edges. I decided that I'm going to make it 28 inches from the outside to the outside. What that means is I'm going to be using, this is just a standard 1x6. I'm pretty sure it's just a 1x, yep. So this is just a standard 1x6. So it's 3/4 of an inch thick. That means I want to make, these two are going to be my runners from end to end. I want to make these two 3/4 of an inch shorter on this end and 3/4 of an inch shorter on the opposite end of it. So I want to make these 1.5 inches less than what I want my overall length to be. And I want it to be 28 inches, so I'm going to mark these guys at 26.5 inches long, both of these two. These boards are longer than that, which is what I want, because then I'm going to use, so I'm just trying to figure out how long they are here. So they're a little over 32 inches. So I need 26.5 inches, which is right here. So what's left on here, I'm going to divide in half and cut that in half. And these are going to be my little support blocks. And that board should be real close to the same length as this board. All right, so that part of it's simple enough. So what I'm going to have is just these, it's a 1x4. The two runners from end to end are going to be a 1x4. I'm going to radius all four edges of that, and I'll go over that in a little bit. And then I'll show you kind of what I have figured out, and I hope you guys can see my marks here. So I don't necessarily have it a set length from the end of my board, and I may move it over because there's this crack right here. I may like try and cut that off and then start on a nice fresher piece here. What I did is I took my square and I drew a line. I actually drew a couple of them because I was playing around kind of where I wanted. So I just drew a line at a 45-degree angle. That's the angle I decided that I wanted my two boards to be set at. And then I did the same thing on this side here, so you can see where my line is. What these two lines are here and here, here and here, that is the width of this 1x. So I just set that on there, and then I just marked a line on both sides of it. And then this is where the back side of my 1x4s would set. Okay, so I didn't really know how wide I wanted that set. So basically what I ended up doing is just took my square like that and drew the two lines on each side. You could kind of see I actually drew one side and then flipped it over and drew the other side like that. I figured that's about a decent size for a beaver to be. I don't really know how wide that needs to be. Like I said, I have no dimensions on where that should be. Again, I'm kind of going by the seat of my pants here. What I am going to try to do is I'm actually going to try and leave my ends a touch longer than I actually do want them. And what that will allow me to do is later on I could actually move my 1xs out a little bit if I needed to. What that ends up giving me is what do I end up here? Between my 1xs, so right here would be the corner of my 1x, there'd be a 1x setting here and one right here. Between these two, you end up getting about 3 3/4 inches roughly. So from here to here is about 3 3/4 inches. I feel like nothing's gonna fall through that gap. I mean, we're talking that much. You know, it's gonna have to be an absolute tiny beaver. Even a muskrat, you know, a bigger muskrat may not fall through that. So I feel like that's a pretty decent width. What I'm gonna do, and then what I did is I went about 5/8 of an inch from here to here, and I did the same thing, 5/8 of an inch. You could kind of see my line right here, and you can see the line. I just extended my line straight out, and then this, I just took a bucket, a little bucket I had, and it's about a 4.5 inch radius, so a 9-inch diameter bucket, and that gave me that nice arc. Because it looks like on that picture that I showed you that they have it cut out, I think, so like the head can flop out of the end of your beaver skinning rack, and then maybe the tail, if you leave the tail on, would be able to stick out that, or like the, you know, the cartilage part of the tail would stick out through that hole instead of trying to push it towards the other end. It'd allow you to slide your beaver back and forth in there just a little bit. But I'm going to leave that 5/8 of an inch lip so it can't slide completely out. Hopefully it will catch and stop it from sliding completely out when I'm pulling on it. So from where I extended this line out here, from here to here I have about 2 inches. And what I'm going to do is I'll go over 2 inches from this side of it and then cut it off. And what I'm actually thinking I'm going to do, so it's going to be cut off about here, I'm going to leave like a couple inch wide, maybe 2.5, 3 inch wide foot, and then I'm going to cut it up and then over and then back down again. Just so I have more of a foot on each corner rather than it trying to set on that entire edge. I think that's going to help me if I get debris on my table or anything like that. I think it'll help me not try to rock, and it'll help me keep the thing setting flatter on my table out there. It also will lighten it up a little, which I could care less about, but I'm also thinking that it's going to give me a little more focused weight in certain, you know, in just those feet where the feet are setting, and I don't think it's going to want to slide around if my table gets wet or bloody, you know, because the beavers do tend to bleed when you're skinning them. And with this design, hopefully the blood will run off and onto my table, skinning table, and stay off of my pelt. Typically what I do now is I just roll them around on my table as I'm skinning them. Well, then anytime they bleed, it gets all over the fur and everything. So this way, hopefully it'll kind of keep them up off the blood. This rack is probably going to get bloody. I could take a hose to it and rinse it off. I'm fine with that. All right, I think I kind of explained to the best I can what I'm going to do. I'm going to, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one end out, get it shaped to the size I want it, and then I'm just going to, I'll cut the arc in there, I'll cut it off, I'll cut the bottom out of it, then I'll just move it over, lay it on here again, trace it, and then I'll cut it so both my ends should be identical that way. Just trying to think if there's anything else that I need to tell you guys or show you guys to begin with. I think before I turn you on again, I'm going to cut these guys. I'll get them cut to the 26.5, get my couple other short little blocks cut, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with those, how I'm going to attach everything there. These two boards aren't necessarily the straightest, so you could see that that one rocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get it lined up where I want it on one end, get it screwed to the end, and then I'm going to get it setting on my table and just set my end up there, and wherever this ends up being on the second side, I'm just going to match drill it to my end and screw it on. And that way that should keep my two ends setting nice and flat on my skidding table, instead of these trying to twist my end around. All right, we're going to start cutting boards. I'm gonna, like I said, I'll get one end cut and I'll kind of show you how that looks, and then I'll get it sanded. I'll kind of show you what I'm gonna do for sanding it. And then, like I said, I'm gonna router all the edges to round them all off so I don't have any sharp corners. All right, we'll turn you guys back on when I get a little farther along. All right, guys, so we're making some progress here despite some equipment failures. I had to do a little bit of repair on a couple of my appliances, but we're getting there. I did end up redrawing this guy. You can see that's where I had originally drew. I drew it on the other end. I actually chopped the end of my board off and then started fresh. So my whole piece is 13 inches long from end to end. I went 2 inches in, then drew my line at a 45. And then I went over 11 inches and drew this line at a 45. Where those two lines, and what I ended up using is a ice cream pail lid. And I just sat that on my board. And where it hit here and here, I just kind of centered it in there and traced around it. And that's what I cut to. So, and then I just left it going straight past then. So about here to here, it's straight out. And then on the bottom, I went 2.5 inches in on each side, and then 3/4 of an inch up. And again, what I feel like that's going to do is give me a little bit better standing when it's actually setting there. All right, so what I'm going to do with this now, oh, and then I didn't measure how much I rounded it, but I just kind of rounded the corners off on each side. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take and I'm going to run the router around the entire thing except for the bottom edges. You know, all the side, the top, and then this little profile. I'm going to router with a 1/4 inch radius bit, so just round all the edges off. But I don't want to do my feet, so here and here I won't radius these edges. So I'm going to trace that guy on here, and then I just use a jigsaw to cut it, and then I just used a belt sander to kind of sand it smooth. I still may sand a little bit more, but quite a bit of this is going to get routered out of there, so I'm not really that concerned about it. So that's that. I got my 2 boards here cut at 26 3/4 inches long, and I ended up with 4 blocks that are 2 inches long. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to screw these on flush with the end, just like that. And what I'm going to do, I actually got a drill bit here. I don't know what size that one is. I think it's 3/32 drill bit. And then these are the screws I plan on using. So they're 1.25 inches. I may actually even use longer ones. So going from this board into my end board, I'm going to use these because I don't want them going all the way through. But going this direction, I may actually use some longer ones. I do have some 2-inch sheetrock screws here, so I may end up using some of them 2-inch ones, so they'll go a little bit deeper into this block. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to pre-drill holes on both ends of this thing and screw my blocks onto my boards, onto the long boards. So it'll be just set up like that. And I'll do both of them. And when I go to router these, what I actually was thinking about doing is I'm going to router around and actually router this board. That way this joint stays nice and sharp and I don't end up with a rounded corner in there. You know, this little stretch. So I'll get all this screwed together and then I'll router it. And then my plan is I'm going to drill 1 hole right in the middle of this, and I'll have 1 screw going that way into my end board, and I'm going to drill 2 holes going the opposite way. So I'm going to have 2 screws this way, 1 screw that way, and that really locks the joints down. So there'll be 3 screws on this one, 3 screws on this one, and I may run a couple screws into the end grain of this board. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do that or not. If I do those, I will probably use these longer screws again. But all right, I'm going to start clamping some of these up. I'll get probably probably set that guy on there that way. It's a little bit better that way. But I'll get all 4 of these screwed to the boards. I got to figure out what side of these boards I want to be facing up, and whichever side I want up, obviously these I want on the opposite side. So I'll do that. I'll trace this other one and probably cut it out, and then I'll turn you guys back on. Alright guys, so we're making pretty good progress here. We'll quick show you what I did while you guys were shut off, and then kind of explain to you where I'm going to go from here. I got my board screwed to each end. I also pilot drilled a hole on each side, and I got both pieces done, so that one's got the pieces sticking on it too. I had a little bit of a problem though. If you could see right here, there's an extra hole drilled, and right there's an extra hole drilled. What I did is I drilled using this 3/32 drill bit, and then I just used, this is about 1/4 inch, I'm not even real sure what size it is, just to countersink it just a little, because like these dry pine boards, I was afraid I was so close to the edge that even the head of my screws would be enough to split my board out. So I wanted to just countersink it just a little bit with that. And as I countersink it, all of a sudden it would just grab and it would suck my board right up onto the drill bit in 3 places, 2 on one. So it did it right here, it did it here, and it did it on that one. This side here actually did okay. But you could see it pulled it like halfway through my board, and I didn't want my screw countersunk that deep, so I just moved over a little bit and drilled a new hole. Not gonna hurt anything, it'll end up filling in with blood and whatever. And then I got the second board cut out. So I got both my ends here. Imagine they probably match up like this. Pretty close. My notch in the bottom is off a little bit, but if I get them set in this way, my 2 grooves here are pretty even. I'm not real super concerned. Like I said, it's just a relief. And I got my corners rounded. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go outside and I'm going to router all my edges except for the edges where it's sitting on the ground. So neither one of these 2 edges or these 2 edges on both of these. So these 4 edges and these 4 edges won't get radius, but all the rest of them I'm going to run the router through all these, all around the whole outside profile of it. That way I don't have to worry about sanding it. I got my router set so it should router nice and smooth. And then on these I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to actually router these edges. My screws should be in far enough the router shouldn't hit that, or I'll be careful as I go over them. But then on the underside I'm actually going to router like this. So I'm actually going to run my router in, around, and out, and then I'm going to router this edge here too. This all will be up tight against, and I'm not too worried about these 2 corners. I can sand those just a little. I did mention that I just used a sander, a hand sander. So what I got is just a belt sander, and that's what I kind of just went in here and just kind of smoothed out the jigsaw cuts from my jigsaw. Alright, so we're going to get to routering here. When I get all that done, I should be ready to start assembling, and it's going to be pretty quick, just some few screws. I'll probably do some pilot hole drilling before I turn you guys back on, but otherwise I should be pretty close to get this thing put all together. Alright guys, so I spent all that time and I got everything routered. I sanded a little bit where here and there it left a little burr, it kind of left a rough edge when you're kind of routering cross grain, and got all that sanded pretty smooth. I might sand a little bit more after I get it all assembled. But when I'm looking to get it assembled, I run into a couple things. One, I should have marked all my indicator lines of where I wanted my braces to be, but I cut through all the lines I had marked on kind of when I had pre-figured out before I was going, like here I don't know if you can see that little ridge. I'll sand some of that off. But I cut through all of my marks I had. So I don't know. Right now I got this is about 4 inches apart. I don't think that's terrible, but I don't know. It seems like a long ways. But the reason why I kind of have it setting where I did, what I did is I marked a line 2 inches up all the way across my board. That's what, right here, there's this line. And I did it on this one as well. This line here is marked the best I can, 5/8 of an inch from here down, and I marked 5/8 of an inch here down. So I did that on this one as well. You can see my line, hopefully there, yeah. But when I put my board, so I'm trying to line it up there, and what I wanted was this corner of the board lined up with my 2-inch line. So I'm lining it up that way through with that line, and I'm lining up this corner with my 2-inch thing. But you could see my board sticks off the side, my 2-inch board. I could cut that off, I'm not worried about that, but if I do that on both sides here, get this side where my lines were, then I have a really big gap in here. Just like in here I got, I don't know what it is, it measures necessarily, but we're 4 3/4-ish. So almost 5 inches in between my two boards, and I feel like that's way too wide. So I don't know, I almost needed to make this board here, I don't know, a little taller. I'm not real sure. I didn't plan on this either, because then when I try to slide this down, say I just tried to slide it down, I end up like over that radius there. If anything, I should have cut this a little narrower, but that doesn't look so bad. I was looking at maybe doing this. That gets this edge about in line with the radius on each side. And I try to kind of keep it lined up with my lines there. You know, and that shifted these down because they're sliding at a 45-degree angle, so I don't know. I'm going to keep looking at this a little bit. So now there I'm at like, I don't know, 3 7/8 roughly. I don't know. We're going to keep looking at this a little bit, kind of figure out, like I said, I may end up trimming some off of these boards a little bit one way or the other to get them so I can get these located to where I want them a little better on the ends. I do have, like I said, a pilot hole here. I may end up just quick running a screw into these, figure out about where I want them, then run a screw in them, and then I can actually set it, you know, how it'd be setting on my table and get a little better idea on how it's going to look. But or I might try to clamp them on. I got these wood clamps here. I may do that actually. I may just try to clamp them on there tight and just see how it looks where they're at. Play around a little bit with how they're, you know, located on there. See if I can figure out how I want them. When I figure out where I'm going to put them on here, I will turn you guys back on and let you know. Alright guys, so I think I got figured out what I'm going to do here. My measurements, maybe I maybe shouldn't have had my ends quite so wide. You know, quite so long and a little bit higher like this, not cut in quite as deep. And that would allow these to be squished together just a little bit, like even a 1/2 inch on each side. I'm running, this end is about right at 4 inches. This end's about at 3 7/8. I'm going to leave it like that. I did tell you to begin with that my boards were kind of twisted. So what I did is I just set my square in here, and it's setting almost completely flat on both sides. On this side, I'll try to get so you guys can see. You can see like right in here, there's a little bit of a gap. So this side, this end here isn't quite at 90 degrees. This end here is like almost perfectly 90 degrees. And it, you know, it obviously varies a little from end to end. What I ended up doing to figure out what the location and everything, I used a pencil. So I'm up about a pencil, which is 1/4 inch up off the table to that bottom corner of this. And then what I tried to do is just line up the edge of this radius with the edge of this radius. So the radius on this board, you know, here, lined up with the edge there. So that's about how I have. And what I did is I did that on all 4 corners, and it ended up being pretty even all the way around. And you can actually see where I drew my line, my boards are almost perfectly on my line. This one's in just a touch. I could possibly bump that one out just a smudge, and I may end up doing that just because, like I said, this end is just a touch narrower. My lines on this end, after I got looking at them, they're not running like this one's running way like that. It's not really parallel to right here. And that side is actually running the other way. It's angling up, so it's not really parallel. So I'm not too concerned about that they're not on the lines. But yeah, so I think that's where I'm going to put it. What I'm going to do now is, it's going to be a little tricky to do it on camera, so I'm just going to explain what I'm going to do. I'm going to go on the outside right here, pre-drill a hole using a 3/32 drill bit. And then I'm not going to worry about countersinking the board because the board shouldn't split that far in from the edge. And then I'm going to drill a second one down here, making sure, so basically they're going to be on either side of my clamp here coming through. I'm going to use these 1.25 inch long screws, so you can see they won't go all the way through that board. So I'm going to put 2 here, 2 here, and 2 on each of this end. And then I can take my clamps off, and then I already have the one pre-drilled hole in the middle of this where I'm going to run a screw the opposite way. So there's going to be 2 running this way, 1 running that way. And what I decided I'm going to do is I'm going to go right in the middle of this board, and I'm going to drill, and I'm going to put a 2-inch long screw in there, just to kind of pull everything up tight. Get an actual 2-inch long one. So that guy should be in there quite a long ways. So that should help pull this board tight and kind of reduce this gap a little bit. Because this one here, it's actually almost leaning out a little. This board is leaning out a little, and I don't really want it like that. So like I said, we're going to put, we're going to go around. I'll do 2 in each one, and then I can take my clamps off. Then I can show you guys a little better. We'll get that done, and then I'll show you doing the rest of them. Alright guys, so I think I got it temporarily put together. Not temporarily, but it's put together now. On this end here, I got 2 in each one. My clamps were in the middle of my block, so it worked out pretty well. On this other end here, my clamp was like right up here, which is where I want my screw to be, so I just put 1 in. I see this board sticking out just a little. I'm not going to be too concerned. That's part of because my cross brace here, this brace was twisted enough that it's twisting it down a little. It's lined up over here where I want it to be, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to try and hold you guys, and I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So I have 2 drills here. I got this one here, it's got a Torx bit because the screws I'm using have Torx heads. So I got Torx heads, and then I got my 3/32 and a second drill. Alright. So all I'm doing is I'm kind of looking, you know, like I want to make sure that I hit on my block, right? And then I want to be roughly, I want to make sure that I don't hit this screw, because I did that on the other end. One of the ones I drilled right into the existing screw. So I'm just kind of feeling where I'm at here, and we're going to drill right here. I'm trying not to drill all the way through because I don't really need to be all the way through. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing on this end. So I'm just locating my fingers on the edge of the board, so I want to be in about that far. And I hit my screw again. So that first hole, I hit the screw where I had screwed my cross brace to that little block. Now, it's pretty simple. I'm just taking a screw. And then I'm not running them super fast. And I'm cranking them down just so they're flush. Or just maybe a skosh under flush, because I don't want them catching on anything or anything catching on them. Okay. Now, we're gonna quick move a few things here. I'm gonna put this up here upside down. So now I have these other holes that I had pre-drilled. I'm not going to pre-drill them into this board because I'm not worried about that board splitting. But now I'm going to put screws in all these, and I'm going to use these Torx screws again. I'm trying to get you guys so you can see a little better what I'm doing. Just like that. Okay. I'm not gonna make you guys sit here and watch all the rest of it, but I'll put the other 3 in. So I have one more here, here, and here on the underside to put in. Thing sets nice and flat on my table. Like I said, I am gonna figure out, and I'm gonna drill right here, and I'm gonna drill and put a 2-inch long sheetrock screw into this board just to help kind of suck the end. You know, you kind of see the little bit of gap here. And then I think, like I said, other than just a touch sanding, just to kind of smooth over a little bit of the rough edges, that's all I'm going to do to this guy. So I guess if you guys got any suggestions, or if you guys have built your own, feel free to leave comments down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. We're going to give this one a good shot this fall. I'll catch a beaver or 2 for sure. I do it really without even trying. I've caught them in muskrat sets and different things without even trying to catch beavers. So we'll catch some beaver and we'll give it a shot and see how it works. And then I'll give you guys an update on what I think about it. Otherwise, like I said, if you guys are familiar with these, you have ideas on things I maybe should have did differently, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm glad to hear what you guys have to say. Hit the thumbs up on this video if you guys learned anything, or if you're thinking about building your own. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next Schmattz Outdoors video.